Good day to you guys. Mr. Hanley here, and this is your Bible story for Monday, April 6th. We last left off in 2 Samuel chapter 3. If you remember what happened was, let me kind of turn back here myself to the prior chapter. In 1 Samuel 3, Abner because Abner had come over in chapter 2 to David's side. And Joab wasn't too happy because Abner had killed Joab's brother. So Joab Abner joins force with David, thinks everything's fine because David makes a covenant, says everything's fine, we're good. But then Joab murdered him, and David was not very happy about it. So we start in chapter 4, and it's 2 Samuel chapter 4, verse 1. When Saul's son heard that Abner had died in Hebron, he lost heart, and all of Israel was troubled. So Saul's son, obviously, here is Ishbosheth, who is still currently the king of Israel, but Israel's kingdom has kind of been getting lower and lower and lower and worse and worse and worse and kind of in disrepair, while David's kingdom of Judah is getting larger and larger and more powerful. So he hears that Abner has died, and he's pretty upset. I don't know what his thinking is right now. I don't know whether he's thinking maybe Abner could help me make amends with David. Maybe Abner, I don't even know. I don't know what he's thinking. But it says he loses heart. He's upset. He's sad. I mean, at the very least, Abner was somebody he knew well, and he was sad that he had died. Verse 2, now Saul's son had two men who were captains of troops, so they were high up in the army. And the name of one was Bana, and the other name of the other was Rechab. I don't know if I'm pronouncing those right, but two guys and two sons of Benjamin. And we kind of talk about two different stories here. We kind of get two different stories, and we get a brief preview of another story. So in verse 4, it talks about also at the same time, currently, Jonathan, Saul's son. Jonathan had, obviously we know he had died at the end of 1 Samuel. He had a son who was lame in his feet. This means that his legs didn't work. They were paralyzed or deformed in some way. And we find out why. When Jonathan had died, and it happened a few years earlier, I think about 2 years beforehand, Jonathan, Saul's son, was 5 years old, and Jonathan, Saul's son, had a son named, this son that we're talking about, Jonathan's son. He was 5 years old at the time, and when the news that Saul and Jonathan had been killed, he had a nurse that, as a little 5-year-old boy, was picked up, and the nurse tried to run with him and escape, because the thinking is, if you're the child of royalty, the thinking is that you will be killed next. That's generally what happened in the ancient days. When somebody killed the king, the next person who would come and take over, or would, come and claim the kingdom or something, would try to wipe out all of the ancestors or all of the relatives of the prior king. It's one of the reasons why Saul said to David, okay, I see now that you're going to be king, but please make a covenant with me. Promise me that you won't, kill my family. And so nurse, hearing that Saul was killed and that Jonathan was killed, Saul's grandson, this child, Saul's grandson, Jonathan's son, she gets really afraid, and she knows the deal. She knows what she's supposed to do. She knows the drill. This is what you're supposed to do, is go take the child and hide. I mean, it's the same reason why, if the president dies, the vice president will become the new president, but that's why the president and the vice president are rarely in the same place at once. They try to keep them separated. And so if something were to happen to the president, the vice president wouldn't be in the same place at the same time. They try to kind of keep them separated as much as they can. So here, Jonathan and Saul die, and when the news comes, the nurse grabs this 5-year-old child and runs, trying to get him out. But unfortunately, when she flees, when she runs away, she somehow drops him. She trips and falls. I don't know if it's stairs or if it's outside somehow, or if it's in the whatever. Somehow she drops him. He fell, and broke both legs. Maybe his ankles or something like that. He gets some sort of injury. Who knows? Maybe it was just tendon injuries or something. He gets some sort of bad leg injury. Now the thing is, back in these days, they didn't have doctors' offices or anything like that, and so they didn't know how to set bones correctly. Now your body can do everything it needs in order to repair you, in order to make you better. When you break an arm, what the cast does, the cast doesn't heal you or anything, but just it sets your bones in the right place so that as you're moving it around, they don't heal incorrectly. That's what the cast does. It makes sure it just keeps your arm still so it doesn't heal wrong. Because let's say your two bones are like this, and you want them to, and then they break, and they're like this when they break. What happens is the doctor will reset them so that they're right here, and then it'll put a cast on you so that those bones stay still. And when he puts the cast on, they still stay still. If they break and they're like this or something, and you just leave it like that, they'll heal like this, and you might not have the right function of your arms or your legs or something like that. So what likely happened is he broke some bones in both of his legs, maybe both ankles or something like that, as a small child. It's very sad, and so now he can't walk, and now he can't. He's lame in both legs. It says so. He at very least needs some assistance getting around, and at the very most, he might not even be able to walk at all. And so this child's name was Mephibosheth. It's a very big name to say, but his name was Mephibosheth. And obviously some years have transpired since then. But we're not talking about him right now. It's just kind of inserted in here, one verse about him. We'll get to him later. He comes into the story later, but right now he's kind of in hiding. His nurse, he got lame legs, but his nurse was so afraid that she put him in hiding anyway, and he's still lame, but he's not who we're talking about right now. Who we're talking about right now are those first two guys, Baanah and Rechab. They were captains of Ishbosheth's army, so they were high up. Not quite as high up as Abner, but they were pretty high up. And so they set out in about the heat of the day to the house of Ishbosheth, who was lying on his bed at noon. Now, a couple different interpretations of this. We hear somebody sleeping in bed at noon, and we might think they're pretty lazy. They'll be sleeping in bed at noontime. And that might be the case. He might be lazy. We know he's kind of a weak-minded guy, kind of a pushover, so maybe he's not very hardworking either. But you can't necessarily make that case, because one thing that we have different around here is that in Israel or in the Middle East, a lot of times the heat of the day, the middle of the day, is so hot that a lot of people don't work. People will work as soon as the sun comes up until about maybe somewhere close to noon, and maybe 11 o'clock, and then they'll take a couple-hour break, and then they'll work once it starts getting cooler again. They'll work until the sun goes down, and that seems to be like maybe the case here. Maybe Ishbosheth is taking a nap or something in the middle of the day. Who knows? Anyway, they come into the house and around noontime, and they came all the way into the house and as they were to get wheat. So they pretended to go get some wheat, like maybe they just had to go get some wheat to make some lunch or something. They came all the way into the house, and he's in the middle of taking a nap, and they go and they sneak into his bedroom, sneak up to him, and killed him. It says they stabbed him in the stomach, and they killed him. And then they went and they beheaded him to take evidence back, and then they escaped, and they ran and ran and ran all through the plain. And this is their plan. They come to David at Hebron. Now you might be like, why are they coming to David? They're probably coming to David because they're thinking, they kind of see the writing on the wall, as Abner, I'm sure, did too, that David is having a lot of success, and you want to kind of jump onto that train early rather than too late. And David's having a lot of success, and Israel is going down the tubes. So these guys say, hey, we can get in good with David. Maybe we can kill Ishbosheth. It'll get us in good with David. He'll think we're good guys. Maybe he'll make us captains in his army. Because if we come right now and say, hey, David, can we be captains in your army? They're thinking that a typical person would be like, if captains from another army came, he might be like, what? No, I bet you're spies. Here, execute them. So they're picturing probably that, as any normal commander would do, if they just transfer armies, he'll either think they're spies or he'll just say, no, you fought in the other army. I'm going to put you to death right now. So they're trying to preserve their own lives at this point. And they come up with this idea, if we kill Ishbosheth and we assassinate him, then this new king and this king of Judah will reward us, and it'll be to our benefit. We'll prove ourselves heroes. So they go, kill him, behead him, and bring his head to David. And if you are thinking ahead, if you're kind of picturing what this kind of sounds like, something from the very first chapter in 2 Samuel, then you are doing well. So think about what happened in the very first chapter in 2 Samuel. So they bring the head of Ishbosheth to David. They say, here is the head of Ishbosheth, the son of Saul, your enemy, who sought your life. The Lord has avenged my Lord, the king, this day, of Saul and his descendants. They're saying, yeah, this is the last of Saul's sons, or something, I think, or whatever. He's avenged him, and this is for you. We took God's vengeance on him, and here, we brought him to you to show you, and we did this for you. And so David answers. He goes, all right. I can picture, maybe he takes a minute and says, all right. He says, well, as the Lord lives, who has redeemed my life from all adversity, he goes, I promise by the Lord. Let me tell you a little story. In verse 10, he says, when someone once came to me, an Amalekite, saying, look, Saul is dead, thinking to have brought good news. He said, look, Saul is dead. He actually said, look, I killed him. He said, thinking to have brought me good news, I arrested him and had him executed in Ziklag. The one who thought I would give him a reward for his news. And I can picture these guys going like, uh-oh, we judged this situation incorrectly. So he was bringing up, remember, the Amalekite in 2 Samuel 1, who said, hey, David, here's this stuff. I saw Saul dying, and I killed him, and I brought these things here to you. And he was thinking that he was going to get a reward. And David was like, how dare you? If this is true what you say, then, by your own mouth, that you're guilty. You need to be executed. And so these guys thought, hey, we're going to get another reward. And normally, under normal circumstances, they probably would have. But David was not your normal king. David has a heart after God. He does not seek vengeance. He does not seek selfishness when he's doing the things that God wants him to. When his heart's in the right spot, he does not seek vengeance. He is not selfish. He's not petty. He doesn't worry about getting somebody back. He wants to do the right thing all the time. And so he says, this happened. He goes, how much more when wicked men have killed a righteous person in his own house on his bed? And so he's like saying to these guys, you went and snuck into some guy's house and killed him in his own house on his own bed while he was taking a nap? And they're probably like, oh man, we were wrong here. He goes, therefore shall I not require his blood at your hand and remove you from the earth? He goes, what else? What other option do I have? You guys just told me what you did. Guess what? You're guilty. I have no other option. I have to require your blood from you. And so he commanded his young men, and they executed them and killed them. So that's chapter 4. We're going to go to chapter 5 now. Not a ton of stuff happens in chapter 5, just a little clip, so I won't take too long. In chapter 5, at the beginning of it, a bunch of the tribes of Israel, really the elders, came to him and said, indeed, we are your bone and your flesh. Also in times past, when Saul was king over us, you were the one who led Israel out and brought them in. So they kind of bring it up. They're like, even though Saul was our king, David, you really were our leader, and you were the hero. Everybody talked about you. And David was one of the most famous men in Israel, even from a young age. He was anointed king sometime around like 12, 14, 15 years old, somewhere in that range, 15. He was made a commander in the army around like 16, 17 years old, probably, maybe even 18 years old. Like somewhere in the range. He was very young, and but he was just an amazing general. He's about 30 now, by the way, which is what it says in verse 4. And so he's younger than I am at this point. And so they're like, even when Saul was king, you were a great leader, they said, we know that the Lord said to you, you shall shepherd my people Israel and be ruler of Israel. Therefore, all the elders of Israel came to the king at Hebron, and David made a covenant with them at Hebron before the Lord. And they anointed David king over Israel. So all of Israel now makes him king, not just Judah. And some people say there was estimates that might have been over 300,000 people here. So it's quite a scene, big scene here, this big ceremony. And it says in Hebron he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months, and in Jerusalem he reigned 33 years over all Israel and Judah. So we find out 7 years and 6 months plus 30 years, 33 years. That's about a little over 40 years he's going to reign. So he's about 30 now. He's going to reign until he's 70. Spoiler alert. Okay, so he's going to be reigning for a long time. And he's currently still reigning in Hebron. He's been reigning for about 2.5 years in Hebron. It says he's going to reign in Hebron for 7 years and 6 months total. We're going to read in this chapter that he captures Jerusalem, and he eventually makes that the capital of Jerusalem, but not yet. So the next part talks about the conquest of Jerusalem. At this point, sometimes Jerusalem is also called Salem. It has different names in the Bible. But at this point in time, in verse 6, it says, "And the king and his men went to Jerusalem against the Jebusites, the inhabitants of the land." So at this point in time, the Jebusites, who were Canaanites, are living in this land. The word Canaanite means like it's a group of people. The Jebusites are just one example of Canaanites. Maybe the Kenites would be as well. They're people who are Canaanites who live in this land. And even though they were told, I don't even know how many years early, 300, 400 years earlier, to get all the people out of the land, the kingdom of Judah hasn't removed the Jebusites from Jerusalem yet. And Jerusalem, the way it's situated, it's on a hill. It's called the city on a hill. And it's up on a hill. It's up. So what that usually does militarily is that gives you an advantage. If you're up on a hill, it's a lot easier to defend downward than to attack upward. If you're going to attack somebody, it's almost like having a wall. If you're going to attack a city with a wall, the people on top of the wall have a much bigger advantage than the people down below. And the people down below have to put up a ladder or something to try to climb up there, but you can push their ladder over. You can drop things on them, whatever you need to do. And so they come to attack Jerusalem, and the Jebusites actually say to David in verse 6, "You shall not come in here, but the blind and the lame will repel you," thinking David cannot come in here. So basically, not only do they say that, David, we're going to win, but they insult David at the time, saying, "Yeah, you think you're tough?" They said, "We don't even need to put an army against you. We'll just take our blind and our lame, essentially our handicapped people in the streets, and we'll defend the whole city with them. We don't even need to use an army. We'll take blind people who can't see and lame people who can't walk, and our city is so well situated on this hill, probably with a wall, that we won't even have to defend ourselves. It's easy." So nevertheless, it's telling you, spoiler, again, this is what Hebrew writing does. It tells you what's going to happen first and explains it. Nevertheless, David took the stronghold of Zion, that is the city of David. So there's two names for Jerusalem: Zion, the city of Zion, the city of David. Verse 8, so we're getting details now. "Now David said on that day, whoever climbs up by way of the water shaft and defeats the Jebusites, he shall be chief and captain." And so we don't really know exactly what happens, but he basically incentivizes some of his men, saying, if any of you decides to climb up the water shaft, whatever the water shaft is, maybe it's a way that they send water down, maybe it's part of their sewage, maybe it's part of just some stream that runs through, I don't know what it is, but there's some water shaft, and maybe it's difficult to get, it's probably the only way you could get up over the wall. He incentivizes somebody to climb up it. It must have been a difficult thing to do, and I assume do something like climb up it, get inside it, and open up the door so everybody else could get in. Something like that, I'm not sure. But however they do it, it involves somebody climbing up a water shaft. And that person is rewarded by David, and they win. And so David built a stronghold and called it the City of David. And David built all around from the Millo and inward. We don't really know what the Millo is. We still don't understand what it is. Some people think it's some stone structure or whatever, but anyway, so David wanted to become great. God hosted with him. Verse 11, "Then Hiram, king of Tyre, sent messengers to David, and cedar trees and carpenters and masons, and they built David a house." So here we see David doesn't necessarily just attack everyone. He is definitely a man of war. He's a very, very skilled soldier, but he's also good at diplomacy. This king of Tyre. Remember, Tyre is one of the cities of Phoenicia to the north. The Phoenicians, if you remember, were a seafaring people. They were good sailors. and they are hit or miss. It's where Jezebel eventually comes from. Is a Phoenician city, so some people aren't great coming from. But here, this guy sends messengers and says he wants to just have peace with him. This isn't an area that David is supposed to conquer. And so David makes a covenant with him, and a treaty with him. He accepts the gift, and he's at least friendly with him. And the guy brings him a gift and a bunch of cedar trees, because Tyre is, as I said, Phoenicia, but that's modern day Lebanon, and that it was known for having very, very good, strong cedar trees. And so they built David a house out of these cedar trees. And David knew the Lord had established him as king over Israel. Blah, blah, blah. And he took, unfortunately, though, more concubines and wives from Jerusalem after he'd come from Hebron, and so he had more sons and daughters. So he ends up having a lot more sons and daughters with a lot more wives, which, again, isn't a good thing. So it tells you not everything he's doing is good. But verse 17, when the Philistines heard that they had anointed David king over Israel, all the Philistines went up to search for David. And David heard of it and went down to the stronghold. So the Philistines are looking for him, trying to kill him, because they killed the last king of Israel. So let's do the next one. So putting yourself in that leadership position, you have to understand, it puts a target on your back. Everybody looks at being a leader as like, oh, this is fun. I can be in charge. This will be great. But you don't realize that making yourself a leader will just always get attacked. Everybody will attack you. Doesn't matter how nice you think you seem. Doesn't matter how much people like you, how likable you are. If you are put in a leadership position, people's opinions all of a sudden change about you, and you might be the nicest guy in the world, and people love you. But then all of a sudden you do one thing, because when you're a leader, you have to make decisions. As soon as you make a decision, some people are gonna like it, some people are not. And so when you make a decision that some people don't like, they are all of a sudden gonna be like, well, I don't think you should make that decision. But you have to stick to your guns. You can't just be a people pleaser like Saul was and always try to please the people, because you can never please everybody. Even if you try to please everybody, you're going to find situations where you're doing one thing that this group loves, but then this group hates it, and so you change to make it, and then this group's mad at you again. And so you can't base what you do as a leader on what people will like. You base it on what's the right thing to do. And then even though it's the right thing to do, some people don't understand it's the right thing to do, and they have different opinions, and so those people get angry. But that's just inevitable. If you lead anything, if you are in charge of anything, the people you are in charge of are that are affected by what you're in charge of, there will always be a segment of them that will be angry at you, that will be frustrated with you, that will think less of you, that will be critical of you. And it's just difficult. It's a difficult thing, and pastors go through it. Any managers at businesses go through it. It's difficult to be a boss and a friend. It's really impossible. And so, and pastors unfortunately face it too, because they'll make decisions for the best decision for the church, or ministry leaders. I'm a worship leader. I make decisions that would be the best for my worship team. And who knows, there might be people that would get frustrated with these decisions and think that they're wrong. And there have been plenty of times in the past that I've had different situations that I've been involved in where people think that a decision I made was wrong, and I just have to do the best I can to I might explain it to them. You don't necessarily have to. Some situations you can't. But I might explain it to them and just hope that they understand. But sometimes you have to do what you have to do. And because when you're a leader, it's you that are responsible. I'm a leader for my household, and I'm going to make decisions over the years that right now Charlotte, Susu, and Silas they trust me to make the decisions because they're just little. But as they grow older, I'm going to make decisions they're not going to like, and I can't just go, okay, well, what do you want to do? What do you think we should do? Okay, whatever you want, because they don't know what's best for them. If it was up to them, Susu would probably eat ice cream for every meal and cookies and ice cream every single meal, and that's not good for her. And so I can't make the decision based on what they like. I'm going to make the decision based on what's best for them. And because when it comes down to it, it's my responsibility. When you're in charge, now everything's your responsibility. In our classroom, I'm responsible for things. If you guys decide to do something, you can get in trouble with me, but then I will get in trouble for those actions. I'm responsible for everything you guys do. But so anyway, he becomes a leader now, and now the Philistines are looking for him. And so, and David inquired of the Lord in verse 19, saying, "Shall I go up against the Philistines? Will you deliver them into my hand?" So you see David is still doing the right thing because he's inquiring of the Lord. We can tell when David's heart's in the right place because he inquires of God. What should I do? He goes to a stronghold, and instead of just staying there, he goes, "God, what do you want me to do? Want me to go attack him or stay here?" And the Lord said, "Go up, for I will doubtless deliver the Philistines in your hand." So he said, "Great." And so he goes to this city called Baal Perazim, and David defeated them there. And he thanks God. He says, "The Lord has broken through my enemies before me like a breakthrough of water." And then called the name of that place Baal Perazim. I don't know what that means, and they left their images there. They had like statues and idols and everything, and David and his men just carried them away. They probably golden statues, and they just melted them down for gold. And the Philistines went up again. So they decided that attack wouldn't work, and so they try again and to attack him and deploy themselves in the valley of Rephaim. And so David, listen to this. What does David do? He inquires of the Lord again. And so he asks God the first time, "Should I go attack him?" God says, "Yep, go. You're going to have victory." And then so he attacks him, has victory. They regroup, and they come back. And you would think they'd go, "Well, God's continuing to tell me to go attack them and I'll have victory." It's obvious. I don't need to inquire of the Lord. But remember what happened to Joshua. He had the victory at Jericho, but then he went to attack Ai and assumed, "Oh, this is an easier. God gave us victory at Jericho. Ai, it's a small city. I don't even need to send anybody up. It'll be easy." But he wasn't. He didn't realize that wasn't what he was supposed to do. So David inquired of the Lord here is great. You should inquire of the Lord at the beginning and every single step of the way. There's no time that God's going to be like, "Man, you're praying too much. You're inquiring of me too much." Because he's going to give you wisdom on what to do, and he gives him wisdom here, and he says, "Do not go up." He goes, "Instead, circle around behind them." He goes, because so he basically says, "Wait to ambush them, and I come upon them in front of the mulberry tree." So I guess there are some mulberry trees there, and they're going to wait and ambush them, because I guess attacking them on the open, maybe they had a different strategy the Philistines had, and it wouldn't have been as successful. So instead, he has David and his men circle them, wait in hiding, and he says, "Wait until you hear the sound of marching in the tops of the mulberry trees, then you shall advance quickly." So as soon as they hear the sound of marching at the top of the trees, they know that's the time, and they jump out and attack the Philistines, and he has success. And so he has all the success against the Philistines. And you remember that the Philistines were Israel under the thumb of the Philistines under Saul, and now under David, they are having all the success against the Philistines. So that's chapter 4 and 5 of 2 Samuel, and we'll be in chapter 6 tomorrow. So David's kind of consolidating everything. He's organizing. We're reading all these things about him organizing everything. He's defeating enemies. He's all the elders are coming. He's now gathered up all of Israel as one underneath him. He is now captured Jerusalem. He hasn't quite moved the capital to Jerusalem. We'll kind of talk about that next time, but he's planning on moving the capital to Jerusalem. He's kind of just organizing things that weren't as organized under Saul, because under Saul, they had just gotten a king. They didn't have everything kind of organized yet, and they were under the thumb of the Philistines. Now David's kind of getting everything ready for what's going to be a golden age of Israel under his son's life. So that is 2 Samuel 4 and 5. See you later, guys.